President Trump's former and current lawyers are causing problems for him in the Russia investigation. For more on this, it's time for a closer look. Trump has spent the last few weeks openly threatening his former lawyer, Michael Cohen, by demanding that law enforcement officials investigate Cohen's father-in-law. Trump has been claiming in interviews that Cohen's father-in-law did something illegal, although he doesn't seem to know many details.
In order to get a sentence reduced, he says, I have an idea. I'll give you some information on the president. Well, there is no information, but he should give information maybe on his father-in-law, because that's the one that people want to look at, because where does that money? That's the money in the family. And I guess he didn't want to talk about his father-in-law. He's trying to get his sentence reduced.
What is his father-in-law's name?
I don't know, but you'll find out.
You don't know? You just said he committed a crime, but you don't know his name? Is he Zorro? We don't have a name, but he did carve a Z into the White House. So, we're keeping an eye out for Zax. Now, Cohen was supposed to testify in public to Congress next month about his involvement in plans to build a Trump Tower in Moscow during the 2016 campaign, but today he postponed that testimony due to Trump's threats. Trump was asked about Cohen's decision at the White House this afternoon.
He says he's been threatened by you and Mr. Giuliani. He and his family have been threatened.
No, I would say he's been threatened by the truth. He's only been threatened by the truth.
Yeah, he's threatened by the truth. You know, truth like his father-in-law's name. I don't know if he's threatened by the truth, but at least he knows the truth. If you were put under oath in a courtroom and a prosecutor asked you, what does the president do, you'd say,
I don't know, but you'll find out.
Now, you might remember that just a few days ago, a confusing saga unfolded when BuzzFeed published what seemed like a blockbuster story about that deal to build the Trump Tower in Moscow. And then Special Counsel Robert Mueller's office took the incredibly rare step of issuing a public statement claiming that the story was inaccurate, while BuzzFeed stood by its initial report. Trump slammed BuzzFeed in the media broadly, but claimed he was actually sad about the fact that BuzzFeed supposedly got the story wrong.
I think that the BuzzFeed piece was a disgrace to our country. It was a disgrace to journalism. And I think it's going to take a long time for the mainstream media to recover its credibility. It's lost tremendous credibility. And believe me, that hurts me. It hurts me to say it.
No, you are not in the least bit upset about the media's credibility. You wake up every day and tweet fake news, and your favorite hobby is yelling at reporters.
You know what? You've really had enough. Hey, you've had enough. Sit down. Sit down. Quiet, 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 quiet.
Your campaign.
Wait. That's enough. Put down the mic.
He's like a wrestler on steroids. He's going to show up to his next press conference in a leotard and put Jim Acosta in a chokehold. Here's the thing about the BuzzFeed story. We're in this weird place right now where we keep waiting for another smoking gun, when what we already know is incredibly damning. The president was secretly pursuing a business deal in Russia, while his aides were secretly meeting with Russians offering to help him win. His campaign chairman was sharing internal polling data with a business associate tied to Russian intelligence, and the entire time they were all lying about it. What are we waiting for? We have enough. It's like we're all cops in a surveillance van watching a drug deal go down saying, okay, they gave him the money, and now they're giving them the drugs, and now they're all getting in their cars and leaving, and now we wait. The reason why it feels like we're not getting traction on the stuff we already know is that our political system is incapable of processing it in the way a healthy political system should. Normally, if the president lies repeatedly about his entanglements with a foreign adversary or crimes committed by his subordinates at his direction, that would prompt hearings, investigations, universal condemnation by both sides. Instead, what we have is one party that says, hey, that's bad, and another party that says, so what? Every president in history has paid hush money to a porn star. And the BuzzFeed story was actually a perfect dry run for what will inevitably happen if and when Mueller reveals what really happened between Trump and the Russians after the BuzzFeed story was published. But before the special counsel denied it, Trump's supporters went on TV and radio and offered up a series of absurd reasons why it was not a big deal.
President Trump does not email or text. he tweets, okay, and he uses his phone. So there's going to be no physical evidence for any of this.
The first question has to be, since when has Democrats started caring about obstruction? Because the biggest slam dunk case of obstruction of justice, if we have equal justice and equal application of our laws, is Hillary Clinton subpoenaed emails.
This is an absurdity. I mean, can you imagine any president of the United States being dumb enough to say to somebody, I'd like you to go over now and lie to Congress?
Not only is Trump dumb enough to lie to the country, he's dumb enough to misspell the word country. And look, everybody makes typos, but the president should at least be able to spell the thing he's in charge of. Can you imagine if Steve Jobs had made the same mistake when he launched Apple? So the short answer to all of this is we don't know whether Trump directed Michael Cohen to lie to Congress about the Trump Tower deal, but we do know that Trump himself has lied repeatedly to everybody. And then this week, Trump's current lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, claimed it would have been totally fine for the president to talk to his former lawyer about what he was going to say in his testimony to Congress.
As far as I know, President Trump did not have discussions with him, certainly had no discussions with him in which he told him or counseled him to lie. If he had any discussions with him, they'd be about the version of the events that Michael Cohen gave then, which they all believe was true.
But you just acknowledged that it's possible that President Trump talked to Michael Cohen about his testimony.
Which would be perfectly normal.
No, it wouldn't. Nothing this president does is normal. The guy couldn't figure out how to close an umbrella, and his first instinct was to leave it outside. And Rudy, I gotta say, if you keep messing up like this, Rudy, he might do the same to you. Rudy's comments over the weekend raised more questions than they answered, so in an attempt to clean up the mess he made, he did an interview with The New Yorker, and somehow it got much worse and much weirder. Here's how New Yorker staff writer Isaac Chotiner described the start of his conversation with Rudy. On Monday afternoon, I called Giuliani to try to understand what he was saying about the Moscow negotiations. After telling me that he only had a minute before getting into the shower, he agreed to a conversation. Why does he compulsively share details no one wants to know? It's like he can't help himself. Every interview Rudy does is like a call with your grandfather in Florida. How are you, Grandpa? Well, I'm getting a shot tomorrow in my back for sciatica, and the doctor says I'm gonna be sore for a couple of days, so I gotta use Aspirin. But I got preparation H by accident, so I gotta go back to the pharmacy, even though the lady there was mean to me. All right, you know what? That's great, Grandpa. I gotta go. Giuliani then insisted he knew the BuzzFeed story was false immediately, and in the process, he once again revealed something he shouldn't have. Here's the exchange. I can tell you from the moment I read the story, I knew the story was false. Because I've been through all the tapes. Wait, what tapes have you gone through? I shouldn't have said tapes. So there were no tapes you listened to, though? No tapes. Well, I have listened to tapes, but none of them concern this. Jesus! Rudy is like that guy you play poker with who keeps turning his cards around and going, is this something? He just keeps rambling. It doesn't matter what you ask him. We've been waiting all this time for Mueller to tell us what went down when all we needed to do was point a camera at Rudy and ask him what he had for dinner. I went to a Spanish restaurant and had tapas, but I thought the waiter said tapes. And then they said, no, it's tapas. And I said, it sounds like you're saying tapes. And they said, tapes? And I said, yeah, like the secret tapes of Trump colluding with the Russians. But they said, no, it's tapas. And I said, hey, you look familiar. The very simple reason their story keeps changing is because they are lying. Rudy might be the worst at it, but he's not alone. It's all out there for everyone to see, including the president. He must be watching all these Rudy interviews and saying,
quiet, quiet, quiet.
This has been A Closer Look.